Amazing. Welcome everyone to another Club PF Masterclass. I am your host, Nick Bennett. We have Parthi with us, and honestly, and I'll let him introduce himself in a second. But for anyone that doesn't know what Letter Drop does, it's amazing. We've talked a bunch over LinkedIn. We've talked actually on calls as well. So I'm excited about this. I'm a huge believer of LinkedIn, obviously. So it's changed my life. So I'm excited for this. I'll let you introduce yourself and then one piece of housekeeping for everyone that is listening live. If you have any questions, drop it into the webinar chat. I think I finally, Susanna's on. I think I finally figured this out where I've got the webinar chat actually working. If someone can confirm that and post it so that everyone can see, that would be great. I believe I do have it though, so I'm not too worried. Well done. Amazing. All right. So I finally figured this out as someone that came from event tech as a background. I have not used Zoom in years. So I'm figuring out each week I get a little bit better. So the floor is yours. I'm gonna go off screen. If you do have questions, drop them in the chat and let's make this a great one. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Hey, everybody. I'm Parthi. I'm the founder and CEO of Letterdrop, and today I'm going to talk about how you can turn LinkedIn into a customer acquisition channel, at least if you're a B2B company. It's been incredibly powerful for us. It's one of our largest sources of inbound pipeline. And today I'm going to help you figure out how you can make it work for yourself as well. Before Letterdrop, I used to be a product manager on the search team at Google. I started this company after working with certain types of agencies, and I was not happy with what we were seeing out there in the world. And so I really love the stuff that Nick is doing at ClubPF and really thinking about how go-to-market is changing and how you need to be sort of authentic in terms of how you're approaching things. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So uh, this talk is essentially a variation of this playbook that we created. So if you ever want to deep dive into anything that we talk about here, you can always just go to that playbook. Here is the URL, letterdrop.com/blog/LinkedIn SaaS playbook. Or if that's really hard for you, just search for Letterdrop LinkedIn playbook. You'll probably find it. So I guess the first question is, a lot of people are maybe skeptical as to whether LinkedIn is going to work for them, right? I would say in terms of go-to-market, when people think LinkedIn, they're mostly thinking about cold DMs, all the sort of like spammy stuff. They're maybe thinking about LinkedIn ads, which is great. Also, you're running ABM campaigns. People traditionally don't seem to think about organic LinkedIn or understand its power. There's a handful of companies which have really tapped into it and have made it work really well for them. And I think there's a huge amount of opportunity for everybody else to get in on this as well. And so whether LinkedIn is going to work for you really comes down to whether or not your ICP, the person you're selling to, if they hang out on LinkedIn. It's completely possible that they hang out somewhere else online, like Twitter or other platform, or maybe in some sorts of forums, Hacker News, etc. Or they're just like not digitally native. Maybe they're not online in the first place. In those cases, LinkedIn is probably not going to be as effective for you. But I think for the vast majority of companies, LinkedIn should work. If you're selling into sales, marketing, HR, you betcha that they're actually there. If you're selling to decision makers, execs, professional services, they're also there. And that covers a good chunk of who you might be selling to. If you're selling to engineers, developers, maybe you'll have more luck on like Dev2, Hashnode, Twitter, Hacker News, like those kinds of places. But maybe the more senior people who are hiring engineers, you'll still see them on LinkedIn. And then there are some places where you're just not going to have luck. If you're selling to old school industries, folks who really don't open LinkedIn or check it or aren't really trying to connect with anybody there, tough luck over there. And then if somebody's running a mom and pop shop, like restaurants, retail, those kinds of things, you're probably not going to find them on LinkedIn too. Field sales, for sure, as old school stuff probably work well, maybe some consumer type stuff like Instagram. So just keep that in mind before jumping into LinkedIn. It doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for a good chunk of folks in B2B. It works really well for us. We sell to marketers, and so LinkedIn makes a ton of sense for us. Just personally, in the past 15 months, I've seen 1.2 million impressions on my LinkedIn. 64% of our inbound pipeline is from organic LinkedIn. Little screenshot on the right side to prove it to you that LinkedIn is a big source of our inbound pipeline demos. That's straight from HubSpot. And there are a lot of secondary benefits, right? I think even Nick and I think we met over LinkedIn. It was just like a LinkedIn DM, and we've talked a couple of times, and now we're here. So there are all these partnership opportunities, advisory opportunities, just general networking things that can happen from you being active on LinkedIn and putting yourself out there, which are going to help you and your business in so many other types of ways. And then finally, for people who are buying from you, once you connect with them and they're seeing all this content from you on LinkedIn, they're also going to actually be reminded of you. So traditionally, people do this by having your AE or sales rep sending them reminder emails, following up with them, etc. What happens if they're able to just passively stay top of mind just by connecting with them? And that's what LinkedIn also does for you and makes you actually shorten your sales cycle. So lots of benefits, secondary benefits from LinkedIn beyond just thinking about this as a customer acquisition channel. To prove to you how great um, this is just a short clip, and I'm not sure if you're going to hear it, but I'll turn on closed captions. But
outside of maybe the LinkedIn stuff, why did you sign up the call?
Not that much research. It's mostly the Parthi's LinkedIn. So nice content marketing.
Yeah.
But
I appreciate it.
yeah, no, you're just out there grinding on LinkedIn.
So as you can see, like we do this because it actually drives and truly impacts the business. It's not something that I'm just kind of puppeting to you or I have an agenda. I'm saying this because it actually works. We see this in our calls. People see this, and this could be your business as well. Is kind of what I'm trying to point out.
You probably did some research too.
Oops. So I also want to point out that by being helpful, authentic, and actually sharing stuff, you're going to stand out because LinkedIn inboxes, they're all just incredibly crowded. Here's kind of what you're competing against. The bar is very, very low. I just randomly picked a couple of messages from my LinkedIn. It's just like walls of text, their agenda, people shoving stuff on me. There's no point of view. There's no helpfulness. So here's what you're kind of competing against. And so if you can do anything that's better than this, you will stand out, and that's going to help you a ton. So remember, what we're trying to do here is help you be different, be a magnet so that people come to you, be someone worth listening to, and ultimately you want to be helpful, and the rest will automatically follow. I promise you that lots of great things happen from you being active on LinkedIn, if that's where your ICP lives. And so the question you might have is like, okay, this sounds fairly daunting. How do I get started? And so I'm going to help you kind of break down how you can get started on LinkedIn in terms of turning it into an acquisition channel for you, from just like building a habit yourself to actually going pro and actually optimizing that process to finally actually expanding this across your team, so that your entire company can actually start thinking about social selling on LinkedIn. So the first thing I will say is you just want to build a habit. Don't overthink it. Just start posting anything, honestly, 3 times a week. It's like your first day of running or your first day of hitting the gym. It really doesn't matter if you're working with like an empty bar or if you run like half a mile, or even if you walk half a mile, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're actually building a habit and you're overcoming any sort of inertia, which comes from like not doing the thing. And so my first recommendation is to just get the reps in. Don't really worry about what you're doing, just start building the habit. And a lot of you might say, but I don't have anything to say. And that can't be any more uh, incorrect. The reality is like every one of you actually has something insightful to say. What's obvious to you, just because you experience something every day, might not be obvious to somebody else. And so I promise you that if you just share things that you think are obvious or you're sharing or you're learning, somebody else will also find value from it. So I would just recommend start sharing what you're learning every day, and that's a really good place to start. The other objection I hear is that people are afraid of how they'll be perceived. Am I going to be seen as some sort of like Gary V like type person who's kind of slimy or sleazy online or something like that? Am I going to come off as self-promotional? And here's the truth. No one really cares at all until you're actually sort of a big name or famous, unless you're Nick. No one really cares about what you have to say. And so that is actually freeing in some ways where you can actually say whatever you want. And so what I would do is actually think about, okay, how do I just get this habit? How do I get off the ground? No one's really policing you. You don't need a PR team. You can kind of say whatever you want and you'll be okay. Just put yourself out there, and it's more than likely that something good is going to come out of it as opposed to something bad. So at this point, let's say you've built a habit, you've been posting something out there 3 times a week. How do you actually figure out, okay, how do I optimize? How do I turn this into a machine, essentially? And so I'm going to walk through a couple of steps on how you can actually turn your LinkedIn into a sort of like customer acquisition machine. The first thing we're going to talk about is turning your profile into a sales page. Second thing is to start connecting with people, engaging with people. The third is to form a point of view, having a perspective. Then we're going to ideate with that perspective in mind. And then we're going to break this down into themes. And finally, we're going to measure the results to see that we're actually doing something that's worth doing in the first place. So people historically think of LinkedIn as a resume, and that's not wrong. If you're applying for jobs, your LinkedIn is your resume. But what's more powerful is thinking about your LinkedIn as a sales asset, as a sales page. And so you want to give people a reason to follow you. And so you want to make sure you want to think about your LinkedIn page in the same way you would think about a company's homepage or landing page. So very quick things that you should be doing. You should be turning on creator mode on LinkedIn. What that does for you is it enables a couple of features. More importantly, when you connect with somebody, they automatically start following you. And that's the place where there's the real value, is getting people to start following you so that they can start seeing your content. You're going to fill out your page. You're going to create a sort of like branded cover photo. You want to just make sure you have like all your talks about stuff. You want to make sure you have some sort of byline in your title. You want to take advantage of the CTAs that LinkedIn gives you. And you want to fill out your about page to tell people like, hey, here are reasons why you should follow me. Here's what I can help you with. So the whole goal of this page is to A, get people to take that first action and follow you. And then B, down funnel, is to actually go from your page to click through to through a CTA and get to whatever like demo page, landing page you want to take them to actually convert them into an actual pipeline. The second thing you want to do after turning your LinkedIn profile into a sales page is you want to start connecting with people. So there's some tooling that can help you with this. You can do this without tooling yourself. You can just like search for people in your ICP, start engaging with them and connecting with them. If you want to do this at scale, what I'd recommend is maybe looking into purchasing Sales Nav from LinkedIn. This lets you add a lot more filters and search for the exact types of people you might want to be connecting with. And so, for example, here is a list of VPs of marketing in certain types of cities, at certain types of companies, large enough companies, and it gives you like a great list of people to start connecting with. And then if you want to automate sending these connection requests to people, there are tools like Linked Helper. There's a whole bunch of tools out there which can just, given this list, send connection requests to them. I would highly recommend not DMing people or spamming people. You're just sending the connection request. I would even leave it blank. They can see your profile. If you're creating great content, if you have a great LinkedIn profile, If you're somebody worth connecting with or following, people will accept those connection requests. I, for example, have roughly like a 20% acceptance rate on like blank connection requests. It's going to really depend on your ICP, depend on your title and a whole bunch of other things. But I would just start connecting with people. And then you don't want to bug them. You don't want to bother them. You don't want to send them those LinkedIn messages that I showed you earlier. You're just simply connecting with them. Once you connect, they start following you. You can start engaging with each other passively after that.
Hey, Parthi, I have a quick question for
Go
you.
for it.
So you know LinkedIn obviously has been cracking down on a lot of the automation.
Mhm.
Do, I guess have you seen any issues with like linked helper, for example? Obviously, Sales Nav is a part of their product, but
Yeah.
$115 a month is not cheap. $15 is a lot more reasonable, but I just wonder, and I've never used it. I just wonder
Yeah.
if like you might run into issues with LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. LinkedIn definitely doesn't like Chrome extensions and tools which do that kind of stuff. The thing with Linked Helper is it's a desktop app, so it's not a Chrome extension. That's one difference. It literally just opens the browser and takes some actions on your behalf. And then the second thing is like everything is just rate limited. So it's not fast by any means. It's taking very few actions per day. I've used it for about a year and a half. I don't use it for anything super spammy. I think you can get aggressive with this and do things which are spammy or bad. I literally just send connection requests. And so in a month, it'll get me like another like 30 or 40 connects, things I would do manually. And so far it's been good. But I would definitely caution people to use it with a grain of salt. Make sure like you look through the terms, you're happy with everything before you use it. All I can say is anecdotally, it's been okay for me for the past year and a half, is what I would say. But I think Nick's point is very valid. As long as you're not using it for something egregious, I think you should be okay.
Yeah, that's what I figured too. And I mean, honestly, I'm very bad at sending connection requests to people. So like this could help me, but I'm just, if LinkedIn disappeared tomorrow, I would be in a not a great spot personally. So
Yeah,
I have to
yeah,
treat it very, I have to tread very lightly.
totally. And I just showed you our numbers too. LinkedIn is very important to us. We're like a LinkedIn partner on their developer ecosystem. So LinkedIn's very important to us as well. And so we definitely do think about that. Regarding the sales nav thing, $115 per month, it is expensive if you think about it in terms of if you're not getting value from it. If you do all these actions, like expensive is a relative word essentially. If you spend $115 per month and you close a deal, which is like $12,000, suddenly like everything seems very cheap. And so I would always think big picture about these kinds of things. Again, you don't have to buy these tools to run this playbook. You can do all this stuff manually. You don't need any tooling whatsoever. Just showing you ways in which you can maybe accelerate the process slash kind of things that I look into and do myself for the sake of efficiency. Awesome. Let's keep going. Um, The next thing I would do is actually start engaging with people, right? So we said no to cold DMs, spammy DMs, connecting with people. But we said yes to just like connecting, following with people, following people, and then essentially getting them into your orbit. So we're not doing spammy stuff. We're doing genuine, authentic stuff to make sure that we're engaging with people. And so what I would do is start following your ICP. When you connect with them, you'll start doing that. B, I would follow influencers that your ICP follows as well. So people who already have a great network, just start getting in their orbit. Like we're all playing in the same sort of like field together. Start being friends with them. And I would say have genuine conversations. There's no like great post or please do not use ChatGPT to generate any of this stuff. Try to actually have somewhat genuine conversations in there. So on the right side, you can see I was talking, this is a client that we're prospecting into, and she made a really great post. And it was something that resonated with me. It was something that I had told my team about. I left a comment. A lot of people, other people loved it. And it started a dialogue. And so we actually had a DM conversation about that afterwards. And so I generally have these conversations and speak to people like they're people. In the same way that if you were having lunch or coffee or dinner together, and you were generally having like work conversations around the table, what would you talk about? Those are the kinds of things you want to be mentioning here. You don't want to be doing anything spammy. You don't want to be doing anything that an outsourced person, like an outsourced VA would be doing on your behalf. If that is your bar, just forget about it. Like it's not even worth doing. And so I think the crux of this is you want to be authentic because, and going back to what I said earlier, you want to be different. You want to stand out. You cannot do the same things as everybody else and expect to see results. You need to have a perspective. You need to show up and you need to stand out. And that brings us to this. You need a point of view. So you're going to be creating content, you're going to be sharing stuff, but you need to actually stand for something. And so think about what it is that your company does, right? So ClubPF, for example, or what Nick stands for, is sort of like this people first go to market, which I agree with, which is why we're here. Like we all think about the same things. We're approaching these problems in different types of ways, but you need that kind of POV. So think about what is your POV for your business, right? And if you're not necessarily part of the C-suite or leadership team, go ask them like, hey, here's what I think our point of view is, or here's how I think we're different, or here's how I think we think about the market differently. But I just want to confirm that with you. And so have that conversation and try to figure out, hey, like, what are we saying that might stand out from what everybody else is saying? Like, what do we believe in? And so once you have that point of view, the content you create becomes a lot easier because everything can tie back to this point of view. So once you have a point of view, it becomes a lot easier to figure out, okay, what types of ideas can I be sharing and and how do these ideas tie to that POV? So here is just like a long list of ways in which you can get ideas. Honestly, if you do this for long enough, it becomes second nature. In the same way that like if you're like a runner or like you love swimming or you like going to the gym, if you don't do that for like a week, you feel a little bit antsy, you feel uncomfortable. The same thing happens if you start becoming a person who posts content regularly. I'm at a point where if I have an idea, I have this itch, I have this need to sort of like share it with the world. And so I'll take out my phone and I'll shoot something off. I'll come back to my computer. I'll just make sure that I draft something, I schedule it out. And so for me, it's almost second nature at this point to try to share stuff that I'm thinking about with the world. And it's really fun to see people engage with that and have conversations with you. And forget like completely independently of all of the positive business impact that you could have from this. But here are some ways in which you can get ideas. You can share something you've learned recently, going back to what I said earlier. Nothing is obvious. If you think it's obvious, somebody else doesn't, just share it. It's fine. Um, Think about your conversations with your customers, with your coworkers. What are they asking you? Can you share something that they said? You can anonymize it, but you can say like, hey, like I talked to a customer who said XYZ today, which I thought was really interesting. Here's how I responded to them. Just share that little bit of conversation. I think Chris Orloff does a really great job of this. He tells these stories about how he gets into these like high ACV deals with like these VPs. It's unclear if those are real stories or if they're made up, but they're entertaining and they actually give you some sort of takeaway at the end of the day. And so I think you can actually create those kinds of stories. People love hearing stories and conversations between people. Share your wins. If you're winning, other people also want to learn how to win and be like you. Share how you're winning, share how you achieved it. Teach somebody else so that they can also maybe aspire to do something similar. Flip side of that, share a mistake you made and what you learned from it so that other people don't have to make that same mistake. If you want to start pushing in your product somewhere, which is important, at the end of the day, we're doing all of this because we want to sell something. But you can kind of like start talking about how you use your own product or how your customers are using your product and what types of success that they're seeing with it. I wouldn't make this just exclusively all of your content. I think there's a healthy mix. You probably want to make like maybe 20% of your content about yourself and like what you sell, and like most of it should be general value add. Video, like think about I mean text is great. At the end of the day, like the format doesn't matter. Like what matters is the idea. People will read a wall of text, people will read something short, people will watch a video as long as it's worthwhile watching or listening to or reading. So the format is secondary, but if you wanted to put a face to a name, you wanted to talk to somebody, you wanted that social proof, I think doing like short podcasts, video type interviews, even a Zoom call and slipping it up and sharing like a conversation between yourself and a customer or somebody else is always helpful. Listen to calls with customers, figure out like what they're asking, share those insights. And once you have this machine going, the secret you'll learn, and I think Justin Simon talks about this a lot, is just repurposing and redistributing. Like you already have a bunch of great content. It doesn't take a lot of energy to just like go back and be like, hey, like here's something that we did a couple of months ago, last week, whatever. It worked really well. We should just put it out there again. And so just repurpose anything, webinars, blog posts, something interesting you read online. It doesn't even have to be yours. You can take that stuff, kind of like repackage it, add your thoughts. Maybe if it was something of yours from a long time ago, maybe remix it, post it again. There's no harm in that. It's probably a whole bunch of people didn't see it the first time. You can publish it again. And so as soon as you sort of remove these inhibitions and filters, you start to realize like everything around you is an idea to be shared. And you just try to figure out, okay, like what can I do to share with people? And it's a really great way to come up with ideas. Just make sure that you're thinking about how all this aligns with your POV, right? You don't want to be all over the place. So that gets us to this next topic, which is you want to
Oh,
stick. Yep.
sorry, Parthi, can I ask you one question? So I actually made a post about this today, and I'm curious on your thoughts. It's not directly what you're talking about, but from someone that runs a company, I am curious on your thoughts. So obviously, building up your own brand, you win for yourself, but you win for the
Yeah.
company as well. What are your thoughts on, because some people are like, oh, I don't want my employees to leave because they're building a brand. And yeah,
Mm.
it's a win for you while they're there. Ultimately, they go off and do their own thing. I am curious on your thoughts around that piece.
Yeah, I mean, so ultimately, a company is a team, a company is an organization with lots of people. Um, at a large enough company, nobody is actually permanent at the company, including the CEO. Like the board can fire them, or like a CEO needs to retire. And so I would think about this as less of a, oh, like I'm worried that our acquisition channel is going to be tied to an individual, and instead figure out, okay, like how do I make this something that a lot of people can do? This is actually a playbook, and you can essentially apply it to anybody. Now, who has the sort of like determination and the grit and the discipline to actually execute on that, that's kind of separate, right? That separates the people like doers from like the people who don't want to do. But assuming you have enough doers at your company, anybody should be able to pick this up and run with it. And I know, Nick, like you've done this at multiple companies. You've created an amazing brand for yourself, and you've also created a lot of value for the companies you've worked at. Those companies, ideally, what they should be doing is trying to figure out, okay, like who's our next Nick, essentially, or how do we build up a next Nick, or how do we build up multiple next Nicks? And this is beneficial for everybody, right? It helps the individual, it helps the company. I truly see it as like a win-win-win for everybody, and I don't see it as something where people should be like, oh no, like I'm overly indexed on one person for our company's success. That said, I do believe like most CEOs, every founder should be doing this themselves. You need to lead by example. If you don't do it, there's just like a lesser chance for your employees to do it. I think it takes like a truly self-motivated employee to go run this kind of playbook. If the founder doesn't do it themselves, if you're like a VP of marketing or a marketing leader, I would highly encourage like part of your job is to push the CEO, the board, to be like, hey, like here's what's going to work, here's what's going to drive ultimate business value, and you need to get on board and to be able to sell that to the CEO. That's also part of your job as well. So that's kind of like how I think about it. I think about it as a playbook that anybody can pick up. I think the founder should be doing it. But I think anybody at the company who's customer facing can literally just pick this up and do it. And both the company and the individual should both be pretty happy about it.
Love that. That's exactly the mindset that I think most should have. So thank you.
For sure. So we're talking about ideas. We're talking, and I guess Nick brought that up because we talked about product and stuff, right? And so we're talking about like, hey, ultimately we're doing this to sell.
Yep.
And so let's talk about themes, right? So if you are sort of all over the place, it's really hard for people to follow along. People are like, think about the context in which someone is consuming this. They're on the subway, they're at the gym between sets, they're waiting in line, they're just scrolling mindlessly on their phone, they're between meetings and quickly checking LinkedIn. They're DMing somebody and see this on their feed. So it's very ephemeral. Like you have seconds really. And the reality is like people don't remember a lot of stuff. They have the memory of a goldfish. Like you and I, like all of us, like don't remember a lot of this stuff. And so repetition matters. And so if you're going to be talking about something different every single day, people aren't going to know what to associate you with. And also people aren't going to remember the first thing you mentioned. So you want to almost tell a story or talk about the same thing for like a week or more at a time so that people sort of like understand like what you're talking about this week. If you just have a single theme throughout the sort of like entirety of this playbook or whatever you want to call it, that's also completely fine. But if there are a couple of different angles you want to take or different things you want to talk about, or maybe your offering is like multi-product, I have that struggle. Like we help companies with like everything from SEO to LinkedIn to sales enablement. So pretty much anything a B2B company cares about around content or organic. And it's not helpful for me to talk about SEO one day and LinkedIn the next day. And so we try to group these things into themes. And so I'd highly encourage you to also think about themes, think about repetition, because that's going to help it stick in the minds of the people who are following you. And the last thing, and this is really, really important, because we're not doing any of this for fun. You're not going to get the buy-in from anybody to do all of this for fun. You really need to show results, especially if you want to scale this, if you want to spend more time on it. And so here are some metrics I would try to track if you're going to do this. And this is going to help you have a conversation with your leadership team, with your sales team as well. First thing is, highly recommend to every company, if you're whether it's self-serve or whether it's through a book a demo form and Saleslight, is to have a how did you find us type field. Different perspectives on this. I would almost make it mandatory. I don't think there's anything you need from somebody when they sign up. You do need their email to contact them. And then I would say like this is also the other field that I would almost make mandatory because it influences like how you do marketing and how you're going to deploy millions of dollars in marketing. So it's very important to understand like what's working ultimately in terms of getting conversations, qualified opportunities in the door. So I would start tracking that if you're not tracking it. Add that to your sign up form or your book a demo form and see how many people start saying LinkedIn, say Parthi's LinkedIn, Nick's LinkedIn, whatever it may be. Second place in which you can track this, sales calls. So if your company uses something like a Gong or Fathom or Fireflies, there's a whole bunch of them out there. Pick your tool of choice, but start looking in sales calls for mentions of LinkedIn and try to see if anybody says, and similar to like what I showed you in that previous video, if anyone says like, hey, I came in via LinkedIn. Next thing is you can look at your connections, your followers, and see if those types of companies or accounts are visiting your website. Lots of tools for sort of like IP reverse lookup. So like Clearbit, ZoomInfo, there's a bunch of tools out there, 6sense. But essentially, and Clearbit's free. Like you can get started free. First 500 is free per month, and there's a lot of them out there. But essentially, like looking for accounts visiting your website, that's also an indication that they might be seeing your LinkedIn content, and then they're getting into the orbit of your company. And finally, you have vanity metrics like impressions. I would say this is the least important thing, or the one if you were to go show it to your C-suite, they'd kind of be like, I don't care. So that's the least important one, but it's a good overall indicator of everything else. But the first three, these are and these are sorted in order, really. These are the ones that are going to help you tell a story within your organization and help people also be bought in into this effort. So amazing. So we started off like to just replay this. We started off really small. We are just like, okay, how do we get started? How do we even start posting? How do I get over the fear of posting? Then we went from that, from a little baby poster to a pro individual poster. So now you're like Nick. Now you know how to work the system. You know how to like do all the right stuff. You're a mini influencer yourself. You're starting to see measurable results from all of your activity. The last thing is, how do you get more people to do this? And this is how you truly scale impact, right? Like you doing this on your own is great. If you can get 2 people to do this at your company, even better. If you can get like 10 people to do this, you are just going to dominate. Especially if your ICP is on LinkedIn, they will just start seeing you everywhere. And there are some companies where they have that volume and they're doing a really good job at this. I think like the folks at Hockey Stack, Lavender, metadata back in the day, less so now, but a lot of companies I've seen, Gong, like forever, Clary, like a whole bunch of companies which are good at this at different stages. I think we're starting to get there. We're decent. I'm good about it. I think my team is starting to get there, but we're still a small company. But I'm starting to see the impact of that. But if you can scale this, I think that's where the real magic happens. So how do you actually scale it? How do you get that buy-in from your leadership team if you're not like the founder or leader doing this yourself? First thing is you need to talk metrics and revenue to them. Like you can't talk about hand wavy, fluffy metrics. It's just not going to fly. So going back to what I said earlier in the metrics slide, you need to bring those numbers and say like, hey, here's all the stuff pipeline we've influenced from doing this. I've done it myself individually without any resources whatsoever. I think we need more people to do this and scale it. This is going to be incredibly effective in terms of our customer acquisition. If you don't have results from doing this solo, like you cannot convince other people to do it straight up. Like you, it's going to be very challenging. Maybe you can kind of try to get people to be bought into the concept or idea or point to other companies, but nothing's going to move the needle like raw metrics. Once you have leadership buy-in, the second thing I would do is to get sales buy-in. Leadership matters because they're leadership. Sales team matters because they're the ones who are actually connecting with prospects. They actually have the most prospects in their network if they're doing their job right and they're actually connecting with people. And so it is incredibly powerful if you can get a salesperson to actually run this playbook because they're connecting with prospects. They're going to build their own pipeline through this. They're going to close deals faster because people trust them. They're not seen as a sleazy, scammy salesperson who's just telling people to buy, buy, buy. Instead, they're seen as a consultant, as a thought leader, and people trust them more, and people want to buy from them more ultimately. And so that's why it's very important for your sales team to get bought into this. Ultimately, what matters to them, it's their quota, it's their commission. So you want to talk to them about the benefits to them. This is how you're going to hit your quota. This is how like we're going to get you more qualified leads. And so you need to have that conversation with them. Ultimately, the success of selling this program really comes down to metrics and being able to show people like how you're going to turn all of this activity into revenue. And to just show you like the proof behind this, that I'm not making this up, that this actually works, I'm gonna show you 2 very short clips. This is an example of a prospect who just says they just see us everywhere on LinkedIn.
Very well, from having watched you guys on LinkedIn, is you have like the full spectrum of employee ads that you see from your organization, right? Whether it's automating the likes the way you guys are able to do, or ease at which you're, having Zach, I see you, Parthi, I see you, I see James, I see, your content people, I see a lot of letter drop on my feed, right? So the way that, it creates that sort of organic sell, I think is really strong. You guys do.
So you can see that like when we talk to prospects, they say like, hey, like I'm inundated with letter drop. I just see you guys everywhere. And that's the kind of sort of surround sound you're trying to create in your organization, where it's not just one person, but it's multiple people really surrounding your ICP on LinkedIn. And so they have no choice but to see like your content, understand your point of view, be educated about your product, the problems you solve, and ultimately like maybe want to talk to you if the stuff you're talking about is meaningful. And sorry. And on the sales side, exact same thing. This is our BDR talking about why he loves social selling so much, and something that he's picked up here at Letterdrop.
Yeah, my LinkedIn presence has been playing a huge role in me beating my quota. Like, for example, I was on a cold call 2 weeks ago and booked a meeting in less than a minute because like I said, I'm Ryan from Letterdrop. Like, oh, I've seen you on LinkedIn. Like, love the stuff you put out. I think what that does is our ICP sees me or as a peer because I'm putting out helpful and relevant content on a daily basis and getting my name out there. So they're not really seeing me as someone that's trying to sell them. It's establish some credibility, and they see me as a helpful resource.
Right. So that is what you can be achieving for everybody at your company. So I think this is where social selling really becomes powerful when it scales beyond the individual to your entire team.
Yeah, my LinkedIn presence.
I have to figure out how to move this next. Cool. So the last thing I will say is like, hey, there's a lot of work here. You don't need any tooling. You don't need sales nav. You don't need Blink Helper. You don't need any tooling to run the playbook. That said, you can automate and scale a lot of these things. If you want to talk about any of that stuff, talk to me. This is something that we help with. But the one thing you cannot automate is being authentic. You need to like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that like you can leave to the machines and software, but you do need to have a point of view. You do need to be a real person. Nobody cares about talking with ChatGPT. No one really cares about anything automated. They want to really follow another person who has a lived experience, who has a perspective, has an opinion, and really they want to learn from you. And so that's the one thing you cannot automate. There's a whole bunch of other stuff you can do, but as long as you have that kernel, you have the discipline to run through this playbook, I'm sure you can do a lot of great stuff. And so I'm going to leave you with this. The one thing I'd love for everyone to do today is go share something you learned today on LinkedIn. Heck, you can even share something you learned from this talk, something you learned from work, whatever it may be, just go post on LinkedIn, just do it. If you like DM me or ask me for something, I'll give you that little bit of support. I'll get our entire team to come like and comment to get you started. I think more people should be doing this. If you want to do it, I think there's no better time than to just get started today. It'll take you 5 minutes, I promise, and it can change your life. And with that, I'm done. Happy to take questions.
Amazing. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to drop them in the chat. You can raise your hand. I think I can figure out how to bring people on stage. Oh, we got one. Let me figure out Lindsay. I think I got you up here, Lindsay.
Can you hear me?
We
Hey,
can.
Lindsay, good to see you again.
Hey, good to see you too. So a quick question on, becoming that kind of subject matter expert for your organization. So I know there are some marketers out there that they haven't been a consistent voice in one particular industry. Do you have advice for marketers who maybe have spent time in a multitude of different industries for ideas for how to present themselves as subject matter experts? Should they stick to marketing topics? Should they stick to, evolving with each role into that industry? What do you think?
So I think there are two categories of this, right? So one part of this is like, yes, you can just stick to marketing, maybe like make 10, 20% of your content about marketing. That's generally just like good for you and something you know about. But the reality is, especially if you're a marketer and like your gold on pipeline, like you talking about marketing at a company which sells into a different industry, like into HR or something, is not going to do a lot for you. So you can run this playbook, maybe you'll do some brand building, but it's not going to help you hit numbers. It's not going to help you with your job necessarily. And so what I would say is like, I do believe every employee at any company should try to like really understand their ICP as much as possible. And I understand in certain industries, things might be like very technical. But I would still like try your best to at least get to a point where like you can sort of talk about stuff. For context, I am not a marketer. My background is in software engineering and product management. I run a MarTech company and I learned marketing sort of like through the process of doing this. And so I do believe that people should spend time on learning about their industry and getting to a point where they can at least talk about it. Going back to what I said earlier, like the bar is never too low. Like something that you think is obvious or you think something you learned today is probably something that somebody else might want to learn. So I would still share that stuff. In terms of so that's number one. Step number one, I would just try to figure out, okay, how can you talk to your coworkers? How can you read more? How can you learn more? And how can you start sharing the stuff that you're learning about your industry? The second thing I would do is perhaps try to lean on your teammates. So figure out who actually does know what they're talking about at the company. It might be your founders, it might be an engineer, an accountant, some like scientists at a pharma company, whatever it may be. Try to see how you can have conversations with those kinds of folks on maybe a recurring basis, like drop like a half hour on their calendar, like every 2 weeks. You do need leadership buy-in from this for this. Tell your leadership team like, hey, like I literally cannot do my job without this time. Somebody needs to give it to me. It's going to be either you or somebody on the team and like help, like try to figure out how to get that. And then I would just do interviews with them. I would record calls with them. I would understand how they think about things. And then I would start sharing those kinds of things as well. The other thing you can do is you can maybe perhaps try to see if they're open to it. Try to make those subject matter experts marketers too, like help them build their own brand. I'm not saying everybody's amenable or open to it, but if somebody is, it'll A, be great for their own personal career, and then B, like you're doing your job, it's gonna help you hit your numbers. And see like the company, your CEO is gonna be happy. So it's kind of a win-win situation for everybody. I do acknowledge that it requires a little bit more hand-holding and like moving things around if you can't necessarily talk about things to that level of expertise yourself on day one, though.
Great, thank you.
And it looks like there's another one from Jackie. Hey, Jackie.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Yourself?
Can you hear me? Awesome.
Yes.
I'm doing well, thank you.
What do
Hey,
you
Jackie.
got?
Hi. So this couldn't have happened at a better time because this is something actually that I'm talking about. So we have subject matter experts and we have a lot of content, but nobody's really posting on LinkedIn. My first question would be, you mentioned to sort of trial it. There's probably about 6 or 7 salespeople. Would you recommend taking 1 or 2 of them to trial it to show that it's actually worth it? And then the second question is, should these salespeople repost, obviously with their own thoughts on it from our subject matter experts, or sort of speak in their own sort of way about what they sell and how they sell it?
Okay, so number one, the more people you have involved, the more complicated the equation becomes, and the more ways there's just like more. It's like making decision by committee, right? It's just like harder to get things off the ground. So the first thing I would say is if there's anything you can do that is independent of all these people and you can just like make things happen yourself without relying on any of these folks, I would just say do it yourself. And so I would like go get the insights from the subject matter experts, start posting on your own account, company account, probably you have control over. Just do those two. Then and then you have to probably start connecting with prospects and stuff as well. It's going to take some time. It's going to take a couple of months. But once you do that and you have numbers, then it becomes so much easier for you to like get other people involved. It's easier for you to get the leadership buy-in, the subject matter expert buy-in, the sales team's buy-in. If you try to skip that step and you try to go directly to like, I'm going to get somebody else to be posting, I'm going to get all these other people involved, it's going to be like, from their perspective, they're just like, you don't have data. Like, I don't know if this is going to work. They didn't watch this talk. They're not bought into this. And so it's going to be very, very hard for them to do it. So if you think you have a good relationship with some of those folks and they're very open to working on something like this with you and posting, I think maybe you want to loop them in, but my default recommendation would be to follow the steps I provided, which is like you try to do this yourself first, get the data, and then sort of sell it within the organization. In terms of the actual sales folks and what they should be posting, so there are two ways to do this, right? One is that they post on their own accounts and they kind of like build their own audience. This requires a little bit more work, but it's the most effective way. The second thing that is way easier to do is to just get them to comment and like your own content or the company content or something. So what that does is it boosts that original content, right? So you're getting engagement with that original piece of content, whichever account that may be on. It's a lot lower lift on the salesperson because they don't have to post to their own account, but it still gets seen. Comments and likes still get seen. People don't realize this. They're as powerful as posting on, if not more powerful than posting on your own account. It's better actually for your entire team to boost up a single post from like a CEO or from anybody with comments and likes than for all of them to maybe talk about things independently without really engaging with each other, and all of them just kind of get lost in the sea and none of them really get boosted. So so that's kind of how I would approach it. Let me know if that answers your question or not. I'm happy to dig deeper there as well.
No, it did completely. And I actually did that first step initially already without
Amazing.
really following this game plan. Yeah. So I started tracking within our own company LinkedIn and have seen some influence. So I know it's there. We just haven't exploited or explored. I love the comment and like on our own posts. I think that's just going to kind of show that momentum as well. I didn't even think about that, but I love that idea. Awesome. No, I really appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned was just company account. Like, look, the company account's better than nothing, so I'm not gonna complain about that. Um, like this is the people first GTM, as Nick would say, so people matter. And so your company account can only be so good. Like at the end of the day, people buy from people, people trust people. And so if you can post that from a personal account in any capacity, I think that would be in addition to the company account, I think that would be way more effective.
Yeah, I agree completely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
For sure.
Cool. That looks like all of the questions. Where can people go to find you if they do want to ask you more questions, though?
Yeah, LinkedIn, surprise, is my channel of choice. You can search for me on LinkedIn. I post almost daily up there. You can DM me. If you want to email me, I'm parthi@letterdrop.com, parthi@letterdrop.com. If you want to search for me on LinkedIn, search for Parthi. I don't think you'll spell my last name, so just maybe Parthi Letterdrop will get you to me.
Amazing. And we'll make sure to share, we share the recording with everyone and all
Sure.
that good stuff and slides. So we'll make sure to link to all of that. And yeah, if you guys have questions, go reach out to Parthi. This was fantastic. Parthi, thank you so much. And hopefully we will catch you at the next Club PF Masterclass. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hope you have a splendid one.
Thank you, Nick.
Bye-bye, everyone.